to a special edition of Women Who Lead, part of the Learn, Lead, Go podcast. I'm your host, Janine Attard, CEO of Attard Leadership Academy, and as we enter 2025, we are excited to bring you a transformative 4-episode series designed to equip you with the tools and insights needed for a successful year ahead. In this series, we'll explore starting the new year with the right mindset, cultivating positivity and resilience. Next, we'll cover reflecting on the past year, learning from experiences to build a stronger future, followed by goal setting and prioritization, aligning your objectives with your purpose. And finally, overcoming challenges and staying motivated, maintaining your momentum through adversity. We are honored to have Dr. Lisa Martin as our guest guide us through these topics. Dr. Martin is a licensed clinical psychologist specializing in diversity, equity, and inclusion, organizational development, and trauma informed care. She is a rostered psychologist for the National Basketball Players Association, supporting elite athletes around the world. Beyond her clinical work, Dr. Martin offers trauma informed and anti racism training and consults with schools, hospitals, nonprofits, and businesses nationwide, helping them foster an equitable and healthy environment. Throughout this Women Who Lead series, Dr. Martin will share her extensive knowledge to help you develop a resilient mindset, reflect meaningful on past experiences, set and prioritize impactful goals for the new year. Dr. Martin, welcome to the show.
Hi, Deneen. Thank you so much for having me today.
Dr. Lisa Martin, I am so excited for us to sit down and to discuss this because as we start the new year, people are excited, which I am, and I'm quite sure you are. And then there are times that we're kind of frightful and uncertain about what the future holds. And today, actually during this 4-segment episode, we're going to explore some of the myths and help people get a strategy so that they can be successful in the coming year. Today, we're exploring what it takes to start the new year with the right mindset, whether you're tackling personal goals or professional challenges. How you approach this fresh start is important. So we're going to explore how mindset shapes success, avoid common traps, and share daily habits to help you embrace opportunities and stay growth-oriented. So listeners, grab a pencil, piece of paper, your iPad, iPhone, whatever you're taking notes on. I guarantee you're going to want to take notes. Dr. Martin, let's start with how we can shift our mindset to embrace new opportunities and challenges at work and in life.
Yes, I think it's really important to remember that a life well lived is one where there is change and growth. Right? We want to be able to be open and curious about what is unfolding in our lives and the possibilities that are available to us. I think often we instead come across change and have a little trepidation and fear about what that change means. But if we can change our mindset to be really open and embracing and remember that life is a bit of an adventure, I think we can step into the new year with a bit of openness.
There's someone out there saying, okay, how do I do that? In the moment.
In the moment, how do you change? I think what I do with my clients is I help them to be really grounded in their values, right? What is at the core of you? Because if you're centered there, like what is really important to me, what is my purpose in this world, if you're really centered there, you know that no matter what, you will be guided by that, and that you will land in a place that is okay, because the decisions that you're making, no matter what life throws at you, will constantly bring you back to yourself and what's important. And I think getting to know about those things about yourself, I mean, that comes from a lot of introspection, right? Journaling, working with a therapist or a coach, reflecting a lot about the things that actually bring you joy or get you really excited. I think too often we forget that an important piece of life is getting to really know ourselves deeply. And I think that really helps to set you up for whatever challenges lie ahead.
I'll share a brief story. When I first started to journal, I had just completed a Mindset for Success certification. As a part of the certification to become a specialist in that area, you had to actually go through 1 year of coaching, which entailed journaling. And I must admit that when I first started to journal, it was my grocery list, my to-do list, because my mind was flying all over the place of things that I needed to get done. And it was difficult until I settled in and just focused on one specific area. And when you talk about self-awareness, one of the things that I help my clients do as well is that we have guided prompts for them when it comes to developing their leadership, their soft skills, because if you don't know what makes you tick or what triggers you or what values you possess, it's very hard to be what you said, grounded, which is so important, and helping you to uncover that, I think, is essential.
Yes, absolutely. I love to do this exercise in groups where I ask folks to think back to their childhood and think of what was the thing they loved to do as a kid. And so you see this like spark as people are remembering, I used to love to act. I used to put on, plays for my family, like whatever it was that they did. And then we carry that and we say, okay, well, hold that and think about now for your adulthood. Where are these moments of joy that you experienced? And together, that story of your childhood and the moments of joy that you have in as an adult, like what does that through line tell you about what's really meaningful for you, about your values, about what makes you tick? And I love exercises like that to really get people thinking about who's the core of them, and especially as we step forward into planning for and setting goals for the future. Who am I really? Who have I always been?
That is really important if you want to see the success that you dream of. We're talking about mindset, and of course, most of us are familiar with Dr. Carol Dweck, which coined the phrases fixed mindset and growth mindset. I'd like for you to talk to that, and I'd also like to explore why is it important to have the right mindset when setting and achieving your personal and professional goals.
What I often see in my therapy and coaching practice is people stuck in a mindset, that fixed mindset, and often it is so many emotions that they're kind of frozen. Right? Now, I am a true believer that, big emotions like sadness and grief and worry and anger, that those are things that tell us about ourselves and that we need to remain curious about the emotions that are coming up. But what I often see, unfortunately, is a sort of stuckness in those emotions clouding every part of a person's thinking, those emotions staying so big in their bodies that they can't even physically get motivated. So I think it's so important to be able to be at a place where you're in touch with the feelings that you have, you're using them as fuel, but you're not stuck, you're not closed in by those feelings. And so the growth mindset is one that can really be about, hey, I'm accepting and acknowledging the moment that I'm in right now, the feelings that I have right now, but I believe that this is teaching me something, and I'm going to find my way through. I'm going to find my way to where I need to be next.
And the one thing that is so encouraging when, if for your listeners out there that are saying, you know what, I find myself in the fixed mindset, is that we have the ability to change. And I think that is important, that we recognize that it's there's another term, and I do believe it's called neuroplasticity, which refers
Mhm.
to rewiring, which I'm quite sure you could elaborate on to give a more scientific definition. But I love the fact that if things aren't firing well, I have the ability, either on my own or with the assistance of a professional, to be able to change the way I am thinking and responding.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I find too that when clients sort of make that initial breakthrough, and it can come from a number of things, right? It can come from the talk therapy or talk coaching. It could come from suddenly they're taking 10-minute walks every day. But once one little thing changes or clicks, it can become like a cascade of changes. You can suddenly see the possibilities on the other side that were hard for you to grasp when you're in that sort of fixed mindset. But absolutely, like no matter what age, no matter what situation, we have the possibility to change. Even when you think the walls are closing in on you, there is someone out there that can help, that can unlock something for you. Change is possible.
We talked about traps and triggers, and I firmly believe that the more you know yourself and the more you can identify those things in the midst of them occurring, you can quickly shift because you've identified it and prepared. So I would ask you, what are some of the common mindset traps that we should avoid when planning for this year, this new year? We're fresh in 2025. What should we look out for?
Yes. I would say the biggest common trap that I come across in practice is really big, unattainable goals. So clients are like, this year I'm getting fit, so I'm going to go to a HIIT class 5 days a week. Like, no, you're not.
No.
If you haven't been taking if you haven't even been taking a walk once a week, you're not suddenly going to become an athlete, right? So I think a big trap is going sort of from nothing to 100%, right? So really kind of trying to create more bite-sized, smaller, incremental changes is you're going to be more successful. Another mind trap is just, I think, this like perfectionism piece that seeps in, that there's this perfect goal and this perfect way that a goal is supposed to be, and I think that it's really like values set from someone else, and not the person themselves, right? So make sure that what you're setting a goal for is actually meaningful to you. Is it actually what you want, or is it what your parents want, or your spouse wants, or what society tells you want? Because if you're not really deeply invested, if it's not connected to who you are and your values, you're not going to have the motivation to keep with it. So I would say big goals and a sort of perfectionism that is not rooted in what you really want seem to be the biggest mind traps that I see.
I've been guilty of that as well. I have to be transparent and say I have done that on several occasions, but I will also admit that I have become more realistic, and it is so affirming to be realistic in my goals because, number one, it sets me up more likely to succeed and to continue. You hit on something there very important when you talked about they have to mean something to you. If you don't have buy-in in what you're trying to achieve for your life, no matter how many cheerleaders you have in your life or in your environment, it's not going to matter, because at some point the fuel of those outside cheers is going to wane. That's when you're going to need that internal mechanism to kick on and keep you moving forward.
And I think also that sort of understanding that your motivation is also going to naturally rise and fall, and to expect that, and to have a plan for when the motivation dips. It's going to happen. What are you going to do in that moment when it dips to keep you moving through? and also to recognize that eventually it will come back up again. So it's really having this sort of long-term perspective on achieving a goal and the work involved.
That takes me back to when I was working with college students, and we would come in and have our discussions about academic goals and things like that. And one of the things that I would always tell the students, what's your plan for failure? And they would always look at me like, what do you mean? I'm not going to fail. I says, we all make mistakes and we all fall short. I said, so what is your plan when you fail? And explain to them. The reason why this is important is because this gives you the opportunity to strategize about what could happen, plan for it, and then you're not wasting time trying to figure out, how do I combat what I'm up against? Well, if you strategized in the past, this may happen, and if this happens, then I know that I shift over to mode A, and I do 1, 2, 3, and that helps get me back on track, and I can continue down the road.
I love that. I do a similar thing in therapy. So I'm going to anticipate there's going to be a moment where you want to drop out because this is going to get hard and feel hard. You're going to be really mad at me at some moment. So what are we going to do? What are you going to do when that feeling starts to kick up? And, people are always like, no, it's never going to happen. And then it inevitably does. And because we set that, we already brought that into the session, people can come back to it and say, all right, we're here. What do we do with this? What was our plan and strategy before? So I love that question for young people. What do you do? What are you going to do if you fail? That's a great one.
And when I was talking to the students, because many of them were first-generation college students, and they didn't necessarily have the environment that they came from that was supportive of the goal that they were trying to reach, become a college graduate. And I said, what are you going to do when your friend calls you up and say that there's this great party that's coming and I want you to go, and you have an exam the next day, or either you have a paper that is due? How can you prepare for those things? How can you find your voice to say, I would love to do that? However, I've got to study or prepare and be ready for the next day. And that transitions over to leaders. And how I see that transitioning is because many times you may get the opportunity to take on additional responsibilities and roles that are not necessarily in your scope, but you still have deadlines that you have to meet. Being able to establish your voice to say, this project sounds extremely interesting, and I'd like to be a part of it. However, my current workload doesn't provide me with enough time to be able to do it. And I think as a part of that, preparing yourself and being self-aware helps you to prepare for those situations and how to respond, which will in turn help you to stay on track.
Absolutely. A thing I talk about often is that boundary setting is self-care. And so what I hear and what you're talking about is that is setting healthy boundaries. And often people, especially high achievers, are really hesitant to set those kind of boundaries. And so relearning and realizing that setting boundaries keeps you safe, keeps you on target for your goals, but also can be done in a way that facilitates good communication and improves the relationships that you have. Saying yes all the time when you don't have the time and the bandwidth, helps no one. So that is often one of my favorite goals to work on with folks for the year is how do I get better care of myself by setting healthy boundaries and communicating effectively to the people around me about those boundaries.
This has been so insightful, and I would like to, before we close out this session, propose one last question. What daily practices or habits can help maintain a positive and growth-oriented mindset as we enter into this new year?
There are many, so I'll hit you with a couple of my favorite ones. One is maintaining your mind-body connection, and that can be achieved through movement. Again, if you've heard me today, I'm a big fan of even short walks, 10-minute, 20-minute walks, stretching, just getting the body moving, because a lot of our stress and our emotions sit there, and so we need to attend to our bodies as much as we are to our minds. The other piece, I think, is human connection. Sometimes when we're so honed in on our goals, we let our relationships in our life kind of go to the back burner. But in fact, it is the time to bring them to the front and to really lean into those relationships. You need them for, love and support and motivation. And, your relationships are a great place to remind you of why you're doing what you're doing. I also love gratitude. If you can work that into a regular practice that you do every day, whether it's journaling or over dinner with your family or at the end of the night with your spouse, what about today am I grateful for? What about today was a win? So just getting yourself in the practice of being able to identify the positives on the day-to-day, because so often we move so fast that we don't hold on to them. And what we hold on to is our failures, right? But I really kind of retraining your brain to look for the good. And the last one I would say really is fun. I feel like grown-ups in the U.S., life is hard, and sometimes we forget to play and to have joy and to have fun. And I think those things give us a good break from the grind. And so are you building in enough joy? I saw that The Rock recently was interviewed, and the interviewer asked him, do you have fun? And it broke the man. He was like, no, I don't have fun. And so since that interview, he's been trying to identify for himself what fun is. And that kind of breaks my heart. Someone that successful has forgotten about something so basic to our humanity, being with each other, playing, fun. I think those things those daily practices can really help us stay on track and remain fueled for the long haul.
I agree with you 100%, and I would like to add another one that I do, and when I say it, people look at me really strange.
Yeah.
I say spend time daydreaming. When we were kids, we would spend time daydreaming about all of these wonderful things that were going to occur in our lives. We would imagine us succeeding, and even if it was something as a little kid, as I can imagine myself climbing this tall tree, getting to the top, and being able to look out over the entire world. But something happens when we become adults. We stop daydreaming. We stop picturing our success. And I have found it to be very helpful to just spend some time imagining the great things occurring in your life.
I love that.
I'm glad. That sounds good. I'm glad I'm on the right track. When we can imagine that is fuel for us. And then it helps prepare us. So I would definitely say spend time daydreaming. Now, don't spend too much, and don't be daydreaming while you're driving a vehicle, but do spend time daydreaming. I think it helps. Those tips that you provided have been outstanding. And listeners, I truly encourage you to listen to this episode again so that you can grab the nuggets that you may have missed. I know that when I'm listening to a podcast episode, I have a tendency to listen the first time without taking notes, and then the second time I'm listening again. I don't know if that's the teacher in me or the educator in me, but I always feel the need to make sure that I am taking notes. Dr. Martin, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Everyone, guess what? There is going to be 3 more episodes with Dr. Martin, and I invite you to mark your calendars. Our second segment is going to be reflecting on the past year, and we look forward to sharing this insight with you.